Good afternoon, everyone joining us. Adam Lundy here. We're going to be getting the ball rolling in just about 2 minutes here. Give everybody a chance to get in the room. We'll start in about 2 minutes. Everyone, we'll get started in about 1 minute. All right. We're 2:03. We're going to get the party started. We got a lot to go over, and we've got a lot of time we want to keep open for you guys to ask questions today. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your afternoon to come meet with us. I'm Adam Lundy, one of the principals of Happy Camper Capital. We've got a great representation of our team here today. Welcome to our first ever investor Q&A. The format for today, we are going to keep fairly structured, just in the interest of time. There will be a recording, so anybody who's joining late or joining after the starts or just wants to not want to write everything down, we will send the recording out afterward. However, our plan is first, of course, to give a quick update on how 2022 went, not only for us as a company, but as an industry as a whole. We're going to talk a little bit for our outlook for the current year, 2023. We're going to give you some updates on some changes that we're making within the company. And then, of course, finally, the main reason many of you may have come today is to open the floor for questions. These can be questions from our current investors who have questions about how we're operating, any of our performance, or from any new prospective investors who just want to know more about the company and how we operate. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or save them until the end. We will have an opportunity at the end where we'll answer your questions. We'll allow you to come off mute if necessary to help facilitate the question answering. So without further ado, let's jump right in. I want to talk a little bit about how 2022 went. It was certainly a tumultuous year for the economy, for investments as a whole. No doubt, we certainly changed some of the way we did things last year to really just, I guess, prepare for what we saw as being inevitable changes. Really kept our finger on the pulse in the industry, specifically outdoor hospitality, just to understand what was coming. And we made some game time adjustments that we felt were in the best interest of our investors to protect our assets. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. However, just to talk about what Happy Camper did last year, we did add 4 new properties to our investment portfolio with our investment partners, bringing us up to a total of 5 properties. Our new site count is 721 RV sites, 285 marina slips, 64 motel rooms. Biggest change we made last year is we launched the Outdoor Hospitality Sun Fund, which some of you in the room are members of right now. That is the fund that we did our first initial closing in November on, which will be closing by November of this year as well too. That fund did make its first acquisition right before the end of the year. We'll talk a little bit more about that momentarily. We had some other exciting changes on the team too. We hired a CFO. We brought in some other team support staff as well too, to include an executive assistant. And we actually just wrapped up 2022 doing cost seg studies on all of our properties. And we're really surprised by what our results came out as for the bonus accelerated depreciation opportunities we had. So we'll share a little bit more as we jump in here. I want to just talk about some of the properties we added to the portfolio last year. Some of you in the room are members of Beyond Our Gateway Rising Sun, Indiana. We closed this one in May 2022. $3.4 million purchase price with 185 RV sites. As many of you know, we look for a couple things. We look for opportunities to expand by means of adding more sites, or increasing amenities to where we can improve rates. Sometimes it's turnaround opportunities. This was more of an opportunity to expand, but it was also a great opportunity for turning the business around. Your second and third acquisitions actually happened within a week, or I should say within 2 days of each other. But one being Beyond Our Gateway Lazy Acres. This is in Center Point, Iowa. We were able to buy this one for the very low price of $1.125 million. And the reason for that, of course, is this was a turnaround business opportunity where the former owners were stashing cash away, and we were able to find an opportunity that we knew was going to be, as long as we were running the business properly, we were going to be able to produce a lot more than they were showing on their books. And we're already headed in that direction. It is on the lower side of our site count at 100 RV sites, but they are very, very large sites. Of course, as you can see in the picture, for those of you who aren't members and aren't familiar with it, this is one of the only RV campgrounds in the area that's able to accommodate the largest Class A motorhomes. So those larger sites are in high demand. So we're actually in the process right now of getting amenities in place to be able to command the revenues that parks like this would be able to justify. A couple days after, I should say prior to that last one, we closed Beyond a Marina at Sterritt Creek. It was our first marina property on Truman Lake, which is of course the sister lake, the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. This was, certainly our most, I think it's still one of our most unique properties, just in that is an RV campground with 100 sites, 285 slip marina that we're currently expanding, and a 40-room motel. This one was one where really, we had more than anything opportunity to expand. We're in the process of adding another dock to the marina, adding RV sites right now, really bolstering some of the other revenue streams in the business. Very exciting property. And then, of course, we wrapped up the year closing our first property into the Outdoor Hospitality Sun and Fund near Sulphur, Louisiana, what we've dubbed Beyond a Resort Cajun Moon. Purchased for $7.2 million, 188 RV sites. We could actually are currently under contract purchasing the land that you can see just on the bottom side of that picture where those trees are, to add an additional 70 RV sites to the property. Again, this one here, we're going to be improving some of the revenue streams and just making some business decisions to keep this one on track with its business plan. So that's just a quick highlight of what we added to the portfolio for our investors last year. The fund that we launched in November is targeted to be a $25 million fund when it closes out this year. In the short time we had it open last year, we raised $1.8 million into that. And then, of course, since the new year, we've had another $2.9 million in commitments, putting us on track for where we need to be to get this raised so we can purchase properties in. Of course, we are leveraging these with debt, so we can we're targeting about 6 to 8 properties going into the fund this year. Just want to give a little bit of highlight on the industry because, as I mentioned, we did make some decisions last year when we saw fuel prices high. We weren't 100% certain how that was going to serve us. Turns out one of our main acquisition criteria, which is our proximity to metro centers, served us well in that when maybe we were lacking some of the interstate travel from people who were doing cross-country road trips, we were replacing those users, almost one-to-one, I'd say. I would say our occupancy numbers weren't significantly impacted with local users, people who were close to home. And fortunately, using our software, our reservation software solutions we were able to verify that, certainly we had a higher increase of people who were staying within 150 miles of their home. So that ended up serving us well. Obviously, as we saw some trepidation in the economy and interest rates going up and just concerns about investment vehicles in general, we certainly made some moves on our side to really tighten up the ship. We were a little more, I'll say, conservative in the way we analyzed our financials at the ends of Q3 and Q4, respectively, just to ensure that we were going to be solvent and keep enough reserves on hand to be able to complete the plans we're looking for and also maintain the business. Fortunately, the industry is showing, good signs as we move forward, as to keeping camping top of mind for people, and of course being a viable means of travel is sometimes in replacement of other forms of travel. I don't know if any of you have taken any flights recently, but obviously airline prices are up right now. And fortunately, one of the things we'll discuss here shortly is how, in a survey that was conducted by one of our competitors last year, they found that most people would actually replace those other forms of travel with RV camping. So that was exciting. So let's talk a little bit about 2023 and what lays ahead for us. I've got some data here that's from actually our industry competitors, KOA. One thing they do very, very well is data analysis. So I've got a SWOT analysis based on our industry. And of course, obviously where we're headed, we're going to do it a little bit out of order: the strengths, the weakness, opportunities, and threats. We're going to talk about the strengths, the weakness, the threats, and then the opportunities in that order specifically, just to give some highlight of some of the things we're focusing on. But some great news, of course, and this doesn't come as a surprise to a lot of people because we've seen how big RVs have gotten in the past few years. That's the reason a lot of us are here right now and interested in investing in this class, is we've seen a major increase over the past several years in the number of camping households. We've got 90. This was, of course, wrapping up 2021. We didn't have data when I put this together on 2022's final numbers for camping households. However, of course, there was a 9% increase. That was from 2020 to 2021. And then, of course, we had a 4.7 from 2019 to 2020. Those were big camping years. And of course, those were a lot of new camping households, many of whom were RV camping, who were buying new units. That was a great metric for us to track how many people were coming in. It was how many people were buying RVs. And of course, the RV Industry Association was our best indicator for, what the future is going to look like. Now, that purchasing did slow down last year. However, what we did see that, of course, was supportive was that the number of people coming in who had started camping and who said they were going to continue camping, that number was also higher. There's always been an attrition rate in the industry, but fortunately, we saw that attrition rate actually taper off a little bit last year. So a lot of the people who came in and got excited about it, were new to it, said they were going to keep doing it. And like I said, 32% of them said they were going to replace other forms of travel with RV camping if the economy continued weakening. And of course, fuel prices were a big concern last year. We did find that that there was a tolerance for which campers would take, I guess for what they would take in higher fuel prices to continue RV camping. And fortunately, we're well below that threshold now. We did, like I mentioned, we did see a lot of people stay closer at home. We do expect, as the fuel prices have been slowly creeping their way down, that we are going to see people taking longer and further trips as they travel. Okay, pardon me 1 second here. All right, let's talk a little bit about the weaknesses, of course. So let's consider some of the big challenges and complaints that people had about camping. 26% said that this was last summer, that booking an RV site was difficult. Now, this came for a couple of reasons. Some of it was site availability. There were very few sites available, and actually finding one available was a challenge. And sometimes it was the means by which those people were booking. So if they had to call to make a booking, or if the reservation sites were difficult, that was a challenge people experienced. By October, a survey that was conducted, a lot of people said that they were put off by the fact that there was so much crowding in these campgrounds, that it was either too many people for them to be comfortable, or there was just that there weren't enough sites available. One challenge that we saw in our industry was the increase in cost to build and develop new sites. So just to give you, for the sake of comparison, that pricing went up more than twofold. Between 2021 and last year. A lot of this had to do with supply chain, labor shortages as well too. So getting the people you need in to develop sites can go up substantially. So that's something we have to consider as we go in and expand and build new sites. Now we're calculating with these newer and higher numbers at this point here. The other thing to consider too is just the delays in getting these things done through the governments. Getting the land entitles taking longer. Governments are backlogged. There was a big construction boom. We are expecting, of course, with interest rates being a little bit higher, we may see that taper off now, might alleviate some of that pressure that we've had. And then, of course, one of the big considerations, and this is one we've been beating the drum on since the beginning, is access to Wi-Fi. A lot of people who are camping right now, a lot of people on the road, are people who are working remotely, are maybe not even full time, but they may be in a position where they're able to work for extended periods of time remotely. They might have kids who are being homeschooled. Wi-Fi is the fourth hookup. We've been saying this since the beginning. We put a lot of emphasis on this in our campgrounds, buying good internet plans, buying good Wi-Fi equipment. And of course, that was one of the biggest complaints that campers had last year, is that getting reliable Wi-Fi was very inconsistent. So this is a common problem we see in a lot of campgrounds we go into, and it's one that we work on addressing in our own business plans. Okay. So I talked a little bit about the fuel prices. Let's talk about that, of course, as we go into the threats. So consumer price tolerances obviously vary with camper experience. Those who are more experienced really would rather save more gas than those who have the new campers they're excited about. Those who were first timers, of course, were willing to go all the way up to $5 a gallon. This is, of course, for regular unleaded gasoline. This is not diesel. They were comfortable paying $5 a gallon to go traveling, whereas, of course, those who were more experienced were, closer to $4.60 a gallon. Like I said, nationally right now, I believe our average is below $3.70 nationally right now, at least last I checked. So we're well within the tolerance of where most people are going to feel comfortable getting out camping this year, and we should see a wider berth on how far those campers are looking to go. Of course, many of those who were considering camping, this was on a survey last summer, said that the fuel prices would not would not change their decision. And in fact, as you can see, that number decreased as time went on. So that was of course as the season ended and as fuel prices were hitting about where their peak was last fall. So again, with fuel prices going down, we should see that number changing. As we look into 2023 and really some of the unknown that may lie ahead of us, we likely head toward what is hopefully going to be a softer recession, but likely a recession ahead. Many of the 35% said they would do RV forms over other forms of, it shouldn't say communication, that was a typo. I'm not sure that got there. It must have been transportation. And then 20% said, of course, they wouldn't change planned RV trips. And 29 said they would still camp with an RV, but stay closer to home. And this, again, is exactly what we spoke about earlier, of course, which is that those people were still wanting to get out and play with their toys, still wanting to get out and camp, but just were willing to stay within a couple hours of home, just keep the fuel prices down. And then, of course, looking ahead, if any economic downturn this year persists into 2024, those numbers are affected, but are still fairly positive in that 25% said they wouldn't change planned RV trips, 32% said they would still camp and stay close to home, and 31% said they would change trip plans to visit local attractions. So again, just changing the focus depending on where we are in the economy at that time. So let's talk about the opportunities that are ahead. These are some big things that KOA found in their surveys that, of course, we are taking a listen to, which is tent campers. Tent campers are not necessarily what we think of when we think of the RV resorts and campgrounds that we build, but tent campers do make up 50% of campers that are out there right now. And that is one market we can focus on, especially as we're looking to people who are willing to travel longer distances because they might not be in a big gas guzzler RV, or they might just be close to home and just looking to get away, but there's still a big group we can't ignore. So one of our intents as we go forward is to make sure that we are making the accommodations that tent campers are looking for, which is typically flat and level sites. Obviously, secure storage other than their car. This means a lockbox they can lock with their own padlock, and having water and electricity available at their sites. This is a relatively low cost investment to capture another part of the market that we're commonly missing. The other one, and this is something we have actually done at Happy Camper with all of our properties since the beginning, is looking for winter camping opportunities. Typically when we buy a lot of our properties, especially those that are in the Midwest and up further north, those properties tend to be shut down most winters. Just the water pipes have to be blown out. They're maybe not winter ready. They're not frost-free spigots. People don't want to plow. We had Lazy Acres, for example, the former owners of that campground completely shut it down in October until April the next year. One of the changes we made right at closing was to add winter sites by putting in frost-free spigots. And we've had 20 sites rented all winter long that were never rented before. So bringing in extra revenue. that wasn't available. Your user base may change to some degree. You might not get weekend travelers in Eastern Iowa, who are coming to visit, but you do get, people who are workers. Traveling nurses are a really big staple for us out in Iowa, who are looking for places to come stay on a multi-week basis, while they work or while they visit family in for the holidays. So this is a great opportunity, of course, for us to capture extra revenue in the wintertime. And then, of course, some of the things we need to think about just to set ourselves apart, and this is one we've, really been big on since the beginning, is clean restrooms. Clean restrooms is right up there with Wi-Fi as being one of the most important things. We've talked in the past, of course, how a lot of people will go straight to the restroom before they even check in to see if they want to stay there. And some of them will cancel their reservation if it's not up to snuff. Having site availability is super important. Of course, with that, making sure that the sites that are available are easy to book. So having an appropriate online reservation system and someone who answers the phone. Guest reviews are a big driver of what's going to cause someone to stay there. If someone goes on Google and sees a campground is below a 4 point anything, they're not likely to want to stay in your campground. So that's certainly a big focus we've had in our business going forward, is making sure that we are really focused on the things that are going to produce 5-star reviews and keeping those reviews up, and actually incentivizing our managers for keeping those review scores up. And then, of course, obviously the self-service, or what we have come to call contact-free check-in, has become a very big thing since 2020, and it's still popular. People like the ability to be able to make a reservation, check themselves in after hours in some cases. And then, of course, just some of the things that people are looking for when they are on site, because obviously these are transient campgrounds. People are coming to have a good time. They want things to do. They want places they can walk, things they can rent. A pool is always a priority, and then having other amenities like outdoor movies are available too are very helpful. We've got some big goals for our business this year. I'll talk a little bit more about why this is important later. We're looking to add a lot of members to our Happy Camper and Beyonder Camp teams this coming year. We've got some big goals to that fund I told you about that we're closing in November. We've got an internal goal to get that thing wrapped up 5 months sooner. So that's something we're working toward, in addition to bolstering up our team with a dedicated diligence team. So we have a little bit more support on our acquisition side, doing in-house development, getting that started this year. Obviously bringing in some more administrative and legal support, getting a controller on staff to help Rick, our CFO. Getting 10 deals closed is a big deal for us this year, but more importantly, when we wrap up that first fund, of course, is going to be launching our second fund. Beyonder Camp has some big goals itself too. We debuted at the Outdoor Hospitality Conference and Expo in Orlando in November with our third-party management sales. So that's going to be something we are building up this year, is providing third-party sales or third-party management to other campground owners. So that's going to be something we're building into, and building a team around that. Of course, bolstering our operations and getting things onboarded in our operations team. A revenue manager is a priority for us to get hired this year. That's someone who's dedicated to making sure our campground daily rates are optimized. So somebody who's keeping track of all the conferences and expos and events happening in a region and adjusting our rates accordingly to make sure that we're getting top dollar. So something the hotel industry does that nobody in the campground industry, to my knowledge, is actually proactively doing yet. Most campgrounds, us included, are using reactive technology that will raise the rates as occupancy increases, but that's only reactionary, and it doesn't actually look for opportunities to raise before anybody's made their first reservation. And then, of course, really just bolstering up the support team, support staff for our team. I'm just opening the books to show you what our goals look like for the year. A lot of this is going to be support staff for us, but this is where our company's headed, which leads me to my next update. This is a big update for us at Happy Camper Capital, because as of tomorrow, we're going to be officially rebranding Happy Camper as we merge with our sister company, Beyonder Camp, to become Beyonder Holdings. So this is, I'm putting it out to you here first, just so you'll understand when you start seeing this new branding roll out. We're doing this for a couple of reasons. One being, of course, just consistency, to make sure that we have one uniform front. We have a lot of interoperation in our team. We have a great project and construction manager on our team named Chad, who works for Beyonder, but we've been contracting him on the Happy Camper side. It makes sense just to work together as a team. It's going to help save us some costs. It's going to make our operations a little bit more streamlined. The other reason we're doing this too is we're actually doing a restructure within the company to put everything under one official umbrella. Because one of the things we are going to be doing this year is we're going to be seeking seed funding into Beyonder Holdings to help hire some of those key players we need to facilitate our growth. As we look to bring in more team members, more properties this year, get the first fund closed, the second fund launched, and really go big with this. So you're going to start seeing Beyonder Holdings coming out as our new name, not to confuse you, not to be confused with our management side, Beyonder Camp, but this will be our effectively Happy Camper, our acquisitions and investor relations team will be under this name. So this is something big we've got coming this year. We're going to be making some internal changes. So if you work with Don or Ramesh already, if they're your investor relations guys, their email signatures are going to change, their email addresses will change. We will still have our same emails. So don't worry if you send something to our Happy Camper emails, they'll forward through to the right one. We're going to have those in place for a long time. All of our websites we're working on making so they'll transition appropriately. As we get our new Beyonder Holdings website launched, our investor portal is going to rebrand, but all the old links should still work. So we're going to make this as clean and smooth as we possibly can. There's no doubt we're going to break a couple things along the way, though. So bear with us while we make this transition. Just know that obviously whoever you've been working with is going to be the same face, same person. We're like I said, this is more an internal structure we're making. So this will go public tomorrow. You guys are getting a sneak peek a day ahead of time. Now, the reason many of you may have come today is I'd like to open the floor up to questions. So do we have any questions in the chat yet, Don or Ramesh?
Nothing yet.
No, nothing yet.
Okay. Well, great. With that then, so if we don't have a list to work through, I'd love to open the floor up to anyone who would like to come off mute and ask any questions today about any of our existing opportunities or upcoming changes.
Thanks, Adam, for doing this. One question was, what are the challenges you foresee for 2023 for Beyonder Holdings?
That's a great question. And first off, thank you so much for acknowledging by the new company. That's a good start. Challenges for our company this year, as I see it, are really going to be, I mean, we set big goals. We set really lofty goals, and just making sure that we have the plan in place to get that done. A big component for that for us is going to be getting the seed capital I was referring to, so that we can help get the positions we need to grow. Really, what stagnated our growth to this point has been the very, I'm going to call it grassroots way we've done this. We've been working through a small network of people we know, and it's really connected us with a really great team. But it has limited our ability to access some of the capital we've needed to grow, get the people in place we need to grow. It's caused us to wear a lot of hats. So we'll really be able to focus on our strengths as an acquisitions team and as a capital group when we can have the right people in place. So I'll give you a great example. Bradley Claudianos, who's on with us, he's with our acquisitions team. He wears about 4 hats when he does a deal right now. We'd like to be able to help him simplify his role and get the support he needs so that he can focus on finding more deals as opposed to shifting his efforts from working on lead generation to focusing on the deal to get it closed. So that would be probably one of the biggest challenges we have, is just hitting the goals we've set for ourselves, which I'm confident if we can get some of the funding that we're looking for in place, that's going to help us get there. Other than that, what I see is just adapting to the environment we're in. Inflation has been high. That has certainly caused, obviously with the Fed raising its rates, it caused our debt to become a little more expensive. It also caused the banks we work with to be a little more conservative in their decisions. Fortunately, we've got some good debt partners that we've worked with who have given us access to what I'd call pretty competitive capital in this environment. So, it's just, I think it's going to be adapting to the environment and staying focused to get our goals achieved.
Thank you, Adam. So I did have a follow-up question, but I'll give opportunity for others to ask.
Okay, great. Do you have any other questions?
And Adam, while we're waiting, do you want to talk about the cost segregation and the tax benefits that the passive investors might be getting as part of the K1s?
Yes, thank you for that, Ramesh. And actually, I'd like to turn it over to Don, and I want to highlight Don for. So Don Spafford, for those of you who don't know him, is one of our partners, and he took it upon himself last year to head our cost segregation study project on all of our existing properties, including Cajun Moon, which was purchased right before the end of the year, 2 weeks prior. In fact, we just got all those back, and we were quite stunned by the results. It was actually our first time doing cost segs on this asset. And, we were not 100% certain. And just to give some clarity to that, for anyone who's not familiar with the term, there are obviously different depreciation schedules within a property. And, you can put certain assets within the property in different schedules, depending on what they are. For example, the framing of a building is a 39-year schedule. Anything that is, bolted in place to it, or maybe nailed to it, like the roofing or the siding, that could be on a 15-year schedule, and anything you can take out would be on a 5-year schedule. Of course, the depreciation usually happens on all different schedules, but we had a change. Obviously, it's changing right now, but the tax code, the way it's written now, is anything 15 years and less in depreciation, we can take accelerated bonus depreciation on year 1. And then, of course, we can take our 39-year depreciation across 39 years in addition to that. And what that turned into in some cases was, I think on our lowest property, Don, correct me if I'm wrong, we were about 50% of our purchase price in bonus depreciation. And on our highest end, we were close to about, I want to say 70%. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't have numbers in front of me, but yeah, I think it was around between 70 and 80 for that the highest one. But yeah, it was great return, great numbers for everybody. Obviously, it's going to be based on each individual's personal tax returns and how much that can actually affect them and help them. But you'll get that on your K1, which you then provide to your CPAs, and they'll work through that with you. But yeah, even these tax professionals that provided our cost segregation studies, they were themselves overly impressed with how high the returns actually were for that depreciation. They weren't even expecting to be as high as they end up being. So yeah, very, very great results from what we were expecting from the front end.
And I should mention, for those who are currently invested, when you got your reports last week, there was a mention in there of the total accelerated depreciation. Now, if you actually go into the portal, we do have the cost seg reports in, so you can read them and see what the depreciation breakdowns were. However, that bonus depreciation is the amount that's depreciated for the 2022 tax year. Now, obviously, I recommend you speak with your CPA about how you can apply that, because it can be applied to past years and in future years accordingly. But to calculate your percentage of that, you'll just need to be in the portal to see your percentage of ownership in the opportunity, and you can take that percentage from the total depreciation there, just to give yourself an idea of where it will be at. But it will be detailed on the K1s when those come out. So super great news. We absolutely exceeded our own expectations with that. So that'll be a nice help around tax time this year. All right, any other questions?
And also, while we're waiting for the other questions to come in, I also want to thank the management team for taking a lot of initiatives around, going after the distributions, providing looking at it from a consistent cash flow perspective. Even though we know this is all like seasonal products, so we, probably Adam, if you want to go in a little bit of detail and explain how we have done the foundational fundamental structure in protecting the distributions, and also continuously monitoring those cash flow kind of thing in place, so that we are always on top of the game, no matter how many properties we have.
No, thanks, Ramesh. And actually, it's a good reminder. Anywho, so one lesson we learned early on, I've always been asked by some of our more sophisticated investors who are screening us for the first time, what lessons have you learned in the past? And I'll say this: this is a great performing asset class. And when Justin and I first began this business, and we had our first property, we were distributing, straight from the NOI cash flow in the properties, and we were giving great distributions to our investors. What we started finding ourselves with was skinny reserves. as we were distributing a lot of the cash flow that was coming out of the business. It's caused us, to reevaluate and of course make sure that while we still wanted to give great distributions, and we were absolutely exceeding our projections at that point, that we wanted to make sure that we were holding ample reserves on hand and also planning ahead for potential rainy days. So as we saw rates rising last year, as we knew that we were going to have to secure some new debt for some of our more recent acquisitions, and as we weren't really sure what the economy was doing at the end of quarter 3 last year, we really began taking a more conservative look at how we made distributions. So I know much to the dismay of many of our investors, we gave small investments in Q3. We retained a lot of the cash flow in the business accounts, and obviously we got some pushback and some negative feedback on that, and completely understandable that people would feel as they did, because this is a seasonal asset, and those were peak quarters in this business. But we still wanted to honor going forward and make sure that we were taking care of our investors while still remaining solvent. So we've devised a system now that we're going to be implementing going forward on our properties. When we are in a position to be able to give distributions, because obviously we can't guarantee your promise, but when we're in a position to give distributions, the format going forward will be now for quarters 1, 2, and 3, we're going to give just 2% distribution on every property. So totaling, and I should say we're going to be targeting a 2% minimum per quarter across the year. But the idea that quarters 1, 2, and 3 will just be a 2%, and quarter 4 will be an evaluation of the business, its reserves, and then a distribution accordingly. So an example could be if we were in a position where we'd paid 2% quarters 1, 2, and 3, and we're in a position where we could give a 10% total for the year, quarter 4 could look like a 4% distribution. So that would be an example of what that could look like. So going forward, when that's available, and of course, the caveat on this is always that, we don't make any distributions going forward until after our first full quarter. So a great example is we did not make a distribution out of the fund for Cajun Moon because we only own that for 2 weeks of quarter 4. The first assessment we'll make for a distribution on that is at the end of quarter 1. And then of course, like I said, we'll look at doing 2% per quarter going forward, and then with a catch up at the end of the years accordingly. And of course, one thing to bear in mind too is if any quarter in the past we've ever given a distribution that is less than 8%, or less, I should say less than our preferred rate of return for a year, then that's when we have a catch up at liquidation. So we're always in the business of making our investors whole. But obviously we want to make sure that we had a sustainable system going forward that also was going to be, I guess, keep up with the needs of our investors.
Thanks, Adam. I just want people to hear, because we have done a lot of homework in the last few months to make sure we put that fundamental foundational structure in place so that we approach all the properties kind of a similar way and have that opportunity kind of lined up going forward.
Mm-hmm. And Adam, a follow up to the answer. The quarter 1 is always January to March, irrespective of when the property is purchased. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, the quarter 1 is what?
The quarter 1 is always January to March, irrespective of when the property is purchased. Is that correct?
No, it doesn't have to be that. So say, for example, if the property is purchased in December, then it will be Q1 of the following year. But if the property is purchased in like September, like August or something, the fourth quarter will be the Q1 for that property.
Yeah, not the calendar Q1. It's just the first full quarter of operations. The first time we'll assess a property for potential distribution.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. Calendar quarters will be effect, but depending on the purchase of the property, the following quarter will be the first quarter.
Got it. Okay. And follow up to the prior question that I had, you talked about challenges and you talked about market conditions with regards to. And it's good to hear that you're going to do 2% for the first quarter to third quarter, and then fourth quarter will be playing catch up. With regards to the market conditions, what do you foresee as the challenges with regards to meeting these numbers? Do you foresee more catch ups on fourth quarter, or do you foresee meeting the first 3 quarters and fourth quarter being comfortable?
Well, that's a great question. So I should say, of course, when I mentioned a 2%, per quarter 1, 2, and 3 we would be targeting, obviously that like I said, that could only be a target. If we truly were in a position where we could only afford to make a 1% distribution, then that could be the case. But the target will be 2% per quarter. And then, like I said, an assessment at the end of the year, which could be, potentially higher than that, depending on where we are in the business at the time. As far as what the market is doing right now, like I said, the signs are positive for us going into this year. As we are seeing fuel prices come down right now, which was a concern of ours last year. Obviously, it'll help to have those fuel prices lower to get more people out. As we see airline prices going up right now, knowing that that's going to push more people into road travel or camping vacations as opposed to international or national trips, I feel positive about where the industry is headed right now. The concern we've had for the past year now has been, what the debt situation is going to look like for us in this asset class, because we are still in a very niche asset class. Getting banks to write the loans that we need to buy these properties and to fund our capital improvements has been a challenge in the past. We do have better debt partners than we had a year ago, who have actually helped us on 3 of our properties, going on a 4th right now. So I feel positive about that. Our rates have not come down necessarily, but they've at least stabilized. They were on the rise pretty well last year. We're currently seeing debt right around about 6.75% to 7% in that range. We were a little concerned last year that number was going to be north of 9%, 10% in some cases. So it has fared better than we thought it would. So if we can underwrite with those numbers and show that that these properties are going to work accordingly, then I feel comfortable with where we're headed this year. As far as my confidence in hitting those numbers, I feel confident in hitting it, like I said, our preferred returns. But that said, obviously there's no guarantee in it, right? There's never a guarantee, but I do feel comfortable in what the market's giving us right now.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course.
Hey, Adam, this is Scott. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Scott. How are you?
I'm great, thanks. I've got another cash flow question, and your prior to dialogue, about cash flow answered one of them, but I'm going to ask this one anyway. Hopefully you'll set me straight from moving forward. So the example I'm looking at is Sterrett Creek, but we talk about cash flow year 1 is 6.3, year 2 is 11.7, year 3 is 13.3. Year 4 is 14.8, year 5, 16.4. The average is right around, I think, 12.2 to 12.5. But the main question I have is, so year 2 is 11.7, year 3 is 13.3. Are those numbers what we're hoping we'll get on the cash flow side versus, I know the 8% preferred is what we're getting? Does that question make sense?
The numbers I think you're reading, is that the projected property values?
It is. It's in the summary. Like I said, I was hoping you would just remember those numbers right off the top of your head, but I know you got a million things going on.
Sure. So the projected, when we put our cash flow in our pro formas, I like to say that I think we're fairly conservative in the way we do it. We are typically not writing for things that we don't have experience with, or that the property doesn't have experience with. A good example might be a new rental unit that we haven't done before, or a new amenity that property hasn't had. That's something that we generally will leave out. We typically also will underwrite our first year cash flows using the same ADR, average daily rate, that the former owner was using. Even if we know we're going to be improving the rates year 1, and then we keep our rate improvements fairly modest going forward from there. Only projecting 5%, even if we know we can exceed that, as the industry has been doing. So obviously that's our goal. That's what we target to meet. We get thrown some curveballs every now and again. There's some things that you can't always plan for. Propane prices going up, electricity prices going up. Some of those things happen at rates higher than we might have anticipated. But those are the goals we're shooting for.
Okay, appreciate it, and thanks for you and the team for everything in year 1. So greatly appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. Did you have a follow-up to that, Scott, or did we cover everything?
No, I think that was it. Like I said, in my mind, I just wanted to see, hey, year 2, year 3, they're all moving above and beyond that 8%. And in my mind, I'm looking, to see if that's what we're hoping to achieve, that's fantastic. So
and I'll clarify that again too. So to my point on how we're looking to structure this going forward. So let's just say we're crushing it on Sterrett Creek and we run into a position where we can potentially give investors, let's call it, 10% this year, and what that could look like then is 2% in quarter one, 2% in quarter two, 2% in quarter three. Quarter four, we realized, hey, we did really well. We could give maybe potentially a 4% distribution in quarter four.
Yep, so, got it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
We do have a question in the chat as well. Rick is asking, is our long-term strategy to buy and hold for cash flow or exit when appreciation reaches a target value?
Well, that's a great question. So obviously these properties, we have a planned 5-year hold in every property. If we were to achieve our goals sooner, which could be a potential resale value, we hit our cash flows to a certain point, we can look at an exit sooner. I'm not inclined to say that we would jump straight into that, because if the property is doing that well, we may want to hold on to it a little bit longer. But there is always that option to do so. And it's something that we bring the investors in on that decision. So our PPMs, the way they're written, we require a 75% vote of investor members to liquidate the property. So we're not going to make that decision without your feedback. And, so if that situation were to arise, we'll present it, put it to a vote. And if we have a strong enough vote, then we can look forward sooner. Something that investors can bring to us and request we put to a vote. We don't have to initiate it, and then we can put it out there. We're going to do what the investors' will is, but also we're going to suggest what we think is right. Any more to add to that, Don? Or
I think you can obviously, I think for most people that are investing with us, cash flow is probably the main goal, as we provide typically higher cash flows than other investment options right now. But at the same time, that appreciation is also a great, icing on the cake, I think, as well. So we got another question here from sorry if I say your name wrong, but Murugapan. Do you have glamping, domes, or tents in any of your campsites? Well, I was going to say yes. Well, I'll let you answer that, Adam.
Sure. And I'll cover that one. So glamping is something we've had in our business plans. We brought in a contractor on one of our first property, Sleepy Hollow, last year, who had a glamping model. We made a minimal investment to run some electricity to some tent sites that he converted. Unfortunately, those ones never got off the ground. It was a contractor issue, and we ended up ending our contract with him. I think there was a potential to get those sites rented, but he never finished setting them up. So we didn't have a great experience there. We have it in our business plan for Rising Sun to add some glamping in there as well. It's in our budget. That's going to come as we do our site expansions on our riverfront sites, is where we're looking at putting the glamping there. Some properties we have to really be considerate of what we use as glamping. So some of the tents that are big wouldn't really work well in, say, like Missouri, where we have 90% humidity and 100-degree weather. That doesn't make for a great camping environment. But things like cabins do really well in that environment, and we have cabins at most of our properties. So we analyze this on a market-to-market basis. But yes, we are looking at adding glamping in. It's part of the business plan for Rising Sun. We are adding glamping to Lazy Acres. It's part of our business plan there as well too. So on a case by case, we are adding it in, but we have not yet had successful operating glamping yet. We've still been primarily RV and cabin thus far.
Adam, while we're waiting for the other questions to come in, I just want to add on the Outdoor Hospitality Sun and Fund, we are in the process of acquiring the land right next to Cajun Moon, and the fundraisers are actively happening for that purchase, as well as the value add of sites that's going to happen there as well. So if people are interested, either to accumulate what they have invested before, it's still, the option is available, and also for future projects as well. But there is an active fundraising happening as of now. So feel free to update your investments if you already have it, to get and take that opportunity to the next class and gain that next pref, like 9% or 10%, depending on where you are. And also, if you haven't started yet, feel free. This is as you have listened to the opportunities and the performance so far, and they take it and just start investing in the outdoor hospitality fund. If you have any questions that you want to take it personal offline, feel free to reach out to me or Don.
A great point, Ramesh. And at this point right now, that land we are looking to acquire with the fund for the property next to Cajun Moon is 6 weeks from closing. It's currently going through rezoning with the parish that it's in to get the entitlements that we would need to build the 70 RV sites on it. We've already got a preliminary engineering plan drawn. So once we are able to get the zoning we need, then we know we'll be able to close. We're going to be targeting about another $1 million into the fund just for that land acquisition and what we need to get started on the development. So we're headed in the right direction on that. There's more information about the fund for anyone who's interested in the investor portal under the Outdoor Hospitality Sun and Fund. We actually did a whole webinar just on that. We will have another one coming up next week. So anyone who's attending today is going to get an invitation later today for next week's webinar, just specifically on the fund. So if you have any questions that you see from the portal that you'd like to bring to that webinar, we'll be holding that next week. But yes, thanks for that update on that, Ramesh.
And just a reminder as well, that is for accredited investors only in the fund. Just make the clarification. Another question here is if all of our investments are multi-asset or fund, or are they single asset? I can just answer that briefly. So Brian, prior to the fund, all of our properties were individual single asset investments. We did all of them at that time as a 506B to allow for non-accredited investors. Currently, we are focused on this fund, which will hold multiple properties within the fund as a 506C accredited investor fund. We likely will have some other one-off individual properties as well at some point. No guarantees or time frame on when or what that will be, but obviously, if you're in our portal, you'll be made aware of them when they do come up. Anything else to add to that, Adam?
You hit that one on the head.
All right. So another question here from Rick again. Have you considered adding yurts as an economical alternative to cabins and a trending option in addition to other amenities? He says, I've seen them rented in winter when campsites are closed, less popular. I can see people being interested in the yurt experience where they may not be drawn to a standard cabin.
That's a good question on the yurts. We went to the glamping show this last year. It was out here in Colorado. And we got to walk through a bunch of different glamping options, everything from really neat canvas tents to yurts, cabin styles, park model, you name it. There are a lot of different opportunities out there for glamping. We analyze this on a property by property basis. Where I've seen yurts do really well is in places like Colorado here in the mountains. We see a lot of them out on campgrounds here. I have not seen as many in the Midwest, which is where we have a lot of our properties currently centered. Not to say it couldn't be an option there, but I would probably analyze that on a property basis. Again, what we found is really popular and liked in the Midwest and in the South is cabins. So, that's just in our market studies. Not to say that we couldn't entertain putting more in. I've got a great yurt manufacturer here who I'd probably consider using. They're based out of Montrose, Colorado, who we looked at when we were at the glamping show. So yes, that would be something we would absolutely consider depending on the property.
Dan, let me take the next question from
Sure.
Yeah, do you consider lower investment amount for repeated investors? I know there is a minimum for every project and also for Sun and Fund, and we also have the next class levels that you can go up to for $250,000 and $500,000. Now, obviously, even though we want to set the minimum to avoid a lot of like K1s, accounting, maintenance, and everything else, but definitely, if you are interested, if it's repeat customers, talk to your investor relations, and we should be able to accommodate at least a decent size.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the biggest expense for us is the administrative side, just managing all the accounts and distributions and the tax statements and such. But as Ramesh mentioned, yeah, obviously we'd like to keep our trust investors coming back, so we're certainly willing to work with you. And actually, I think that's probably a great opportunity to mention one of the things unique about the fund. And that is that if you haven't heard, of course, that we do allow you to level up your shares in the fund. So we do have 3 share classes. Our Class C share starts at our minimum investment of $100,000. Class B shares are from 100 to 250, and then Class A shares are, hang on.
No, for 250 and 500.
I'm sorry, from 250 to 500, and then of course Class A shares are 500 on. I knew I caught myself there. And of course, we do allow those shares to level up. So if you made an investment now and wanted to make a larger investment at the end of the quarter, and then another investment at the end of quarter 2, we would allow you to keep investing in and upgrading your shares, upgrading all of your shares to the higher share class, which would come with a higher preferred rate of return. So, it's something that's worth mentioning, especially if you are looking to make progressive investments throughout the year.
Yep. Okay, a couple more questions here. What has been the cap rate changes in the RV market from 2021 to 2022, and what do you foresee for 2023?
Great question. Love that. Well, let me take you back a little further than 2021, because when Justin and I first began this business in 2020, right before things really started blowing up, which is at the end of 2020, the cap rates in this asset class were 12 to 13%. It was tough to sell a campground. Of course, the cap rates were higher because there wasn't as much demand. It took longer to sell them at the time. Campground listed with a broker at that time would take a year to sell. It was a heavy mom and pop business with mostly mom and pop buyers. As soon as groups, similar to us and, some of the institutional groups came in, we watched those cap rates compress very quickly. As we got into 2021, seeing cap rates around 10% was pretty common. By the end of 2021, we were seeing them closer to 9%. Early 2022, when I say we see them, that's what we were seeing in opportunities we were finding. There were brokers out there at the time listing properties at 6-7% cap rates. But we were underwriting at about 8% at the beginning of 2022. And then as soon as we saw interest rates start rising last year, we started underwriting at much higher cap rates. We immediately jumped up to 9 and then 10% for our own underwriting. There were still a lot of properties changing hands in the 7 to 8 cap range at that time, but it was not anything we were interested in. And that's one thing I'll say that I can really lend it to our methods and our processes of procuring our own acquisitions opportunities, finding things off market. We weren't competing with other people on the properties we bought last year, and we didn't buy anything last year below a 9 cap. So just to give some perspective on that, and even right now we're underwriting in the 10 to 11% range, while interest rates are still higher. And I expect we're going to be in that area for a little while. As long as we find willing and able sellers who are motivated and are willing to sell at the right price points, we'll keep our acquisitions moving forward. And fortunately, we have a large enough pipeline to support that at this point.
Okay. Another question here. Do you plan to add water activities, boat rental, etc., to your properties, for example, near lakes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's property dependent. If you look at a property like Sterrett Creek, that, it's on a $55,000 acre, fishing lake, it's a heavy marina property. We have rental boats. So we have a fleet of rental boats. They make an incredible amount of revenue. Smaller properties like, I'll give you a great example, Sleepy Hollow. One of the very first additions we made to that property when we bought it was to buy stand-up paddle boards, and those things paid for themselves in short order. So it depends on the property, what type of watercraft we put in, but stand-up paddle boards, kayaks, boats, depending on just how big the body of water is and what the demand is. Absolutely.
Even aqua parks as well. People pay to go and play on the water.
Aqua parks are a huge source of revenue. And if anyone's curious what an aqua park is, it's basically an inflatable playground on the water. I think it's the best way to put it. And not only will they provide great amenity for the campers who are willing to spend more per night to come camp there so their kids can play on these awesome water parks, but you can also then open it up to the public and charge admission to come use the aqua parks. So we've got some pieces. We've got some, I should say, small water park pieces at a couple of our properties. And we are actively looking to add more to all of our properties because we've seen from other campground owners in the space how well they can do with those amenities in place. Any other questions we have?
Just had one put in here. Okay, so how about renting park-owned classic mid-century trailers or rehab Airstreams? I used to have two Chevy Suburbans pulling 2 RV trailers to fit my tribe. My kids grew up, so I no longer have them, but I miss the RV camping experience. Would love to camp without getting another RV? I'm probably not alone. So I guess looking for like more park model trailers or something to use.
Well, park models are one thing, yeah, and also camping in a camper is another too. So to answer that question in short, I will say yes, we have rental RVs at some of our properties. They're not typically vintage ones that are restored. There are campgrounds who do that. They'll buy Airstreams. I have to say, I think Airstreams are beautiful. I love them a lot. They're really tough to justify their expense. Airstream is very proud of what they've built. Not to say we wouldn't explore it. It's just not something that we have considered yet. Or the rehabbing of older trailers. One thing obviously we do look at is that we can depreciate the RVs a lot faster. So we can buy newer RVs, rent them for a couple of years, and then sell them shortly after that. That can be a very good business model. And yes, we are renting RVs, and a great example is Rising Sun. We've got a few of them out there right now, and those are renting quite well. So I realize now we're coming up on the top of the hour. I don't know if we had any last questions come in, but do appreciate everyone coming out today. As I mentioned, of course, going out this afternoon will be an announcement for next week's webinar on the Outdoor Hospitality Sun and Fund. A recording of today's webinar will go out by tomorrow morning. So if you want to rewatch this, or if you joined us late and you want to see what you missed at the beginning, we'll have that to you here shortly. So of course, any follow-up questions you have, please forward those to anyone on our team who you already know or work with. Or if you're looking to invest for the first time, reach out to Don Spafford or Ramesh. And of course, if you want to talk to anybody in the team, myself, Brad, Justin, and Rick, we're all on here. We're happy to chat with you as well too. So thank you everyone for coming out today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you everyone for joining the Beyonder Holdings Investor Q&A.
Okay.